Everyone for joining today. We're going to discuss three main types of visualizations to look at. Each of these is used different. Each of these has a different goal in mind. Each of these has different criteria, but we'll be focused on what we call a scatter chart, then a waterfall chart, and then a funnel chart. So a scatter chart is usually used to compare two different measures, like maybe total revenue versus total sales, total revenue by a category or by an item, things along those lines. So a lot of it all depends on what it is you're looking for. So in your visualization here, we're going to start with a blank screen, and I have my data over here. A scatter chart is basically a visual that shows scattered instances of data throughout. So what we would do is we're going to drag and drop two fields that we want to compare. Now the fields would be dragged to our X axis and our Y axis, being the X being the horizontal, and the Y being the vertical. For this particular exercise is we're going to pull the total sales variance for a particular year to our axis. And then we're also going to pull, in this case, I just want to do, so we've got something, our sales per square foot. Now what you'll notice right away is we just have a dot in the middle. What this means is right now, Power BI is just aggregating our data, which is its default behavior. Basically, everything is in one bucket here because I've got a total sales variance of minus 4.67 and my sales per square foot are 13.07. Now that's like that because I've got nothing that I've told it I really want to per se group on, or in another word, be able to chart on. Some people would say this is how I'm going to segment my data. So if I'm comparing sales and revenue, I might want to split that data by a category. It could be by a manufacturer. It could be a month of the sale. All the various different things that you might, think about. What we're going to do it by this time is we're going to do it by a store number. So our store number is basically like ID in our store. So I have here in our data, my store number is going here in the details. And then once I put it in the details, you'll see here that I've got a bunch of data here that it's looking at. Now, that data that you're looking at really is showing you that each of these are groups of information. So if I looked at each of these right now, I could see that store 568 has a variance to it and a sales per square foot, or maybe store number 504 has it. And you'll notice that we're doing not only a percentage this way of the variance between of our sales, but we're also doing it linear on the dollar amount. So dynamically, I can look up here and say that our store number who has the highest sales per square foot is store 504. But I could look over here to the right and say that our store who has the total or the largest sales variance is 146.62. Now, what that really means in data terms is, again, consider this like revenue per store, but this case right here, it's broke down amongst the square footage of a store. So that way I know that my sales per square foot might be higher in one area, but maybe that's because I have a smaller storefront, something along those lines. There's all kinds of different ways you can analyze that. We can also come back and say that I also want to store this or look at it from a different way. So maybe I also want to see this by district. So I can then, in my legend, I'm going to put a district in. Once I put the district in, It then automatically, based on some of my setups, it is color sorting so that I could go look here and tell what district it's in. Again, I could reverse these and my district be the detail and the store number be the information underneath. But you'll notice that we have the legend at the top telling us what's going on. And then the next thing is while we're looking at it, we can say, okay, well, what does this really mean? You know, what type of period is this for? So our size, when we have a size, our size is basically asking us to tell us what is the time period or framing that I want to look at. So I want to look at this year's sales. So over here on my chart over here, if I was to go through and look at it, you'll see that I have all these different things. I can look at this by different periods. I can look at this by dates, years, you know, all of it again depends on how I want to look at this. So this year's sales is going to give me this year's sales. Give me just a second here to where I actually pulled this year's sales from, and this year's sales would be let's just gonna say we're going to take our total sales in here. You'll notice that as soon as I did that, it gives us a bigger grouping. So now I not only have my total sales for a period, I have the sales square footage as well. I have my variance, the district, and a number, just again by adding fields in here. One of the cool things about a scatter chart is with a scatter chart, you can actually do what we're going to add a time-based field to this, which is we've put here in what we call the play axis. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to take a particular time frame. So in this case, I want to look at a year. And by dragging a year in the play axis, excuse me, I want to give it, I apologize for this, it's an open date hierarchy. By dragging my year to the play axis, I now get a timeline of what it is. So now at this point, I can look at a date and time, meaning if I just come in here and click, I can see that my data is dynamically changes based on maybe the time frame I'm in. So I can then go through and look at, in this case, I've got an 8-year period going. And what I can look at is in 2011, you'll see here that store 41 had the total sales variance as the highest, with total sales of 450. But if I look at store 526, it had the most total sales, but the variance was very low. Now this variance could be a sales to budget ratio. Again, how you define that is basically what you're defining in your data. The other thing you can do with this that's really nice is we can hit what we call the play button, and you can dynamically watch the data just kind of switch across the field until it gets all the way to 2014. Now, by doing that, and if I come back a couple steps, if I can highlight on any of these, and let's find one that gives me what I'm looking for. Give me just a second here. It's you know, a demo or a webinar would not be the same if there wasn't some sort of error that we have. What I'm really trying to do here is there is a way, and we call it a graph. So if I highlight the right combination here, where I've got data that stretches over a period of time, which is what I was trying to find, you can actually draw a line through it, which is where the scattered comes from as well. And as it goes across, you would actually kind of see how it goes from point A to point B going across. Now, obviously, I've got one of the data fields in here, whether it's the total sales or this year's revenue, completely wrong. But we would be able to then to see it go from year to year, and it really just kind of cascades across the screen here. So when you're looking up something like that, look at what they call the animation. It's a trace. It traces the path so that I could see that last year it was 2010, and then as it goes across the board, it went to in 2014. It may be the numbers switch from $10 to $20. In year 9, it changed. That's really what we're looking at in this case. So that again is what we call a chart. Now, there's a lot of different things you can do with these charts once they're built. So what I'm going to do is we'll come back at the end after we get through a couple of these, and we will then go in and give it some information and show you how some of that data can be changed, modified, those type of things. So a waterfall and a funnel chart are two. They're more noteworthy. But they also are, I'm going to call them uncommon, but they are standard visualizations. With those, you can slice and customize the waterfall and the funnel charts. You can create a chart of either type. Waterfall charts are typically used to show changes in a specific value over time. So if we want to add those to the same page is by clicking our new visual. I can then bring a new visual on, and in this case, I'm going to pick what we call a waterfall chart. So the waterfall chart, again, is a way of seeing how things dynamically change. You'll notice that there are only 2 buckets here now. Those 2 buckets are a category and a value. The category and the value are basically our x-axis and our y-axis. So we'll start here by looking at a category. So in the item is I'm going to bring a category up here. And that category is I'm showing an increase in sales, a decrease in sales, and then also the total. I also, because again, we're looking at that variance, let's call it our sales variance, I'm going to take the total sales variance, and by adding that to my breakdown, by adding that to our breakdown, come on. By adding that to our, by adding that to our values, I should say. We then see that here, by the category, and then each of these categories down here represent it could be a class ID in your organization. It could be an item type. You know, if you have different ways that you categorize your sales, this could be a revenue line. Again, we've got quite a few things that we want to look at. But looking at it here, I'm seeing that each of these, you can see that it increases. When we get here to the middle, these are starting to decrease from, you know, whatever it is that this total sales variance is that we're looking at. Now, I can add some tips to here to kind of help us. If I was to look at this year's total sales, or if I was to pull this in and look at the average unit, to date. And by doing that is as we hover over these, you'll see that we can now get more data. So all the tooltip is taking the data it's here and showing us more information. So now instead of seeing a category, And our variance, I can see maybe our total sales, the average dollars per unit, different things along those lines. So again, it's just another way of looking at the data. You can put, anyone familiar with slicers on here? I could put slicers in here to even break this down even more. And again, the breakdown all depends on what I'm using for either be my category or my values. Now, the last one that we want to look at is a funnel chart. Now, a funnel chart is typically used to show changes over a specific process, almost like maybe a sales pipeline or a website retention efforts have been used. What we're going to do is I'm going to base these on what we're going to call a chain. So I'm just going to kind of put these out of my way. Again, I want to give it a new visual. And now I want to grab a funnel chart. So as you can see here, the funnel chart is just what it says. It's a funnel from lowest to highest or highest to lowest, depending on how you segmented it. So the grouping we want to do is we want to look at a open month. So I want my open month to be a group date. I want my breakdown, I want my values to be the, actually, I apologize, I have these backwards. That's my problem, is in this one back here, I wanted to actually show a chain. So that chain of data is now showing it different. This is really what we're looking at. This is looking at one particular type of item and letting it stagnate across. So by doing that, again, I can just look at this and whatever the category is, and then also we have the additional breakdown of the chain is more like the store. So the store chain might be a chain of different stores that we have within there as well. So I'm sorry, if I go back now to adding my visual here and I change this to the graphic, this does make a lot more sense now that I've actually did it. We're able to look at here, and again, we're just looking at the data. So I still have my open month I want to look at. My open month would be an open month. My value to this would be my total sales variance in this case. And I'm using we have a total sales variance here, which gives us this type of look. So now I've got our variance. So I can tell that by each of these in the month, our sales variance was a particular part. If I want to break that down even more, I could look at what were this year's sales versus our average dollar per unit. So if I looked at last year's sales, if I looked at let's go with last year's sales for this. And then I also, again, want to bring in my units. So again, now by hugging over it, I see now 5 or 6 different types of data. I can see what the percentage of the previous was. So this is showing what it was last year. And this would be another case where if I used maybe a waterfall chart that I could put this year's against last year's data on it. But this is the point now where when we look at it is we can begin to look at this and say, okay, we've got the data on there. Now, how do we make it more presenting? There's a couple things I want to show you. And a couple of things is starting with this first one is I'm going to go into our filter. So on our filter, you'll notice here that we have our data labels. You could turn those data labels on or off. So when they're off, that means you could see it when you hover over it, but as you can see here, you don't see it when you look at it. this way. The other thing we can do is by looking at that is we can get down and we can see the data colors. So this is one where we have a default color. Now a default color, I can just change that so that it is, you know, it could be as simple as orange. I could come in here and tell it that I want to see all of it. I could have a different one by month so that if I wanted to look at the chart this way, maybe I could see it like this and actually give it a different hue, you know, so that they look different. But one of the things I want to show you is a conditional format. So I'm going to make my default color this type of blue here. We'll leave this one as it is for right now. But I also now want to give it what we call a conditional field. So I can say that this is based on the count by the open month. I could base it by any of these type of things that I get to. So again, it's just looking at the data I have on here. I can do it by a distinct count. I can say that everything starts here. But here's what this does for us, is by doing this, I come up to this color scale and I say that I want to do it by a rule. So I can say in this first one that if any value is greater to or equal than 0%, and it's less than, let's say 100, I want that to be, and let's make these both percentages, I want that to be maybe this color. And then if I add a new rule, and that new rule could say that if my information is greater than or equal to 1, but it's less than 0, meaning in my case I want it to be a negative, I might say I want to see it red. By doing that, and basically what it would show is it should have showed us that all of this is red. I'm not sure why my color, it's greater than or equal to 0, and it's less than that. Yeah, so let's reverse it. Yes, so I had it reversed. So in this case now, because everything is in the red, it's showing red because they're all negative. Whereas the way I had it the other way, you know, it wasn't showing that. So again, this right here would give you the ability to look at this and see immediately if something had a negative value versus a positive value. Now, just to echo that, if I was to come back and say that we want to take that and let's take last year's sales off, and maybe I want to say that that is by total units instead. We're going to remove the sales variance, and let's say that this right here is just total sales period. So now by doing that, and again, we've seen that we switch these things around, but if I come back in and look at my data colors now, I want to reverse it, and I want to change this from a number to a number. These are numbers to numbers. My rules, it's less than 1. Okay, I am not sure what I just did there, but same thing. If you play with these enough and you do them right, when you put these defaults in, you can basically give this a conditional field. That's really what the moral of this was. And you could do this per chart. You can make this where it's a rule across all 3 charts, especially if they have common data in line. So big thing is you can, many options, changing the colors, you can format, you can add logos to this, you can add headers to this, you can turn things on and off based on your filters here, etc. If there's any questions out there, I'd be happy to answer them. If it is something that you want to submit it, you can submit it to Judy. Judy could get it to me, and then we could follow up afterwards. Thank you everyone for their time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next round.
Thank you all for attending today and have a great day.